term legend is bandied about, kind of used rather freely, but there are moments when that word actually becomes real, manifest in someone who is truly a legend in his own time. Bob Woodward, a two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning, groundbreaking investigative journalist who cracked the Watergate Code, breaking open a world of political conspiracy that shook this nation. Woodward's dedication to chronicling political life and the life of our presidents and holding truth to power is unprecedented. And still, at more than 50 years, he is at the Washington Post, and he is inspiring a whole new generation of journalists and really holding all of us in thrall. Joining him in conversation is the CEO and co-owner of Boston Globe Media Partners, Linda Henry. She is a 4-time Emmy Award-winning producer whose leadership at the Boston Globe has brought this storied institution into a thriving, dynamic 21st century media company. Please give a warm welcome to Bob Woodward and Linda Henry.
Thank you so much, Mary, and thank you to all of you. I was on stage yesterday, and I'm just so blown away by this incredible literary community that we have. These people who are up early on a Saturday morning to come here together to listen and learn and think together. So thank you. It just says something so remarkable about what Nantucket is, that we're together. And thank you, Bob, so much for being here. I know you're not doing too many of these festivals anymore, and so it's such an honor for us to have you in Nantucket with us.
Thank you. It's great to have a microphone I hold, because normally the microphones I have dealt with have been concealed in desks. In the Oval Office. Nixon was so paranoid that they might not get all the words. He had 5 microphones in the Resolute desk in the Oval Office.
So you wanted to start off, before we dive into my questions, you wanted to sort of start off a little bit with what you've been thinking about.
Thank you. Okay, let me talk for a moment to try to address the historic moment we're in. And it really is a moment of intolerable risk, in my view, because of the Trump presidency. Think about it and go through the list. Trump is angrily defunding scientific research, child research, slashing health and human services. Musk is gone, but the idea persists. Slash, cut at random. It's still what Trump is doing. He has threatened to seize the Panama Canal. What a great idea. Acquire Greenland, annex Canada. He has withdrawn from the U.S. World Trade Organization, one of the best nonpartisan organizations in the world. He has dismantled the U.S. international development system. He launched a trade war. In 2017, somebody in the Trump White House during his first term gave me a document that really illustrated the way Trump thinks and his attitude. It's in Trump's own handwriting. I actually have a Xerox of it here because it's a surprising document. Trump has great handwriting, by the way, very discernible, and he writes that trade is bad. This is a guiding principle, and I think it is at the point at which the first Trump presidency fully went off the rails. Trade is bad, is so misguided. I once asked him, what's the job of the president? He said, the job of the president is to protect the people. Actually, as economists left, right, and center establish that trade is good. Trade among countries has lifted more than, think of this, 1 billion people out of poverty around the world. Think of that. 1 billion people lifted out of poverty because countries trade. Trade makes us safer, it strengthens international relations, reducing the likelihood of conflict between nations. International competition among countries really boosts domestic innovation in all countries. It boosts productivity. Trade expands markets for businesses, enabling businesses in all countries to scale up and hire more workers. It lowers prices for consumers. It provides access to a wider variety of goods and services, as well as better quality. Gary Cohn, the former president of Goldman Sachs, Trump's first economic advisor in his first presidency, Cohen would, again, this is, if you were to model and say who should be the economic advisor to a Republican president, it's Gary Cohn. He had all this experience, a Republican, and he had been president of Goldman Sachs, and he pressed Trump on some of the views he had and still has on tariffs, which of course is a tariff is an attack on consumers. Trump said to Cohen, I have had these views for 30 years. Now, think about it. That isn't it kind of a shocking, inadequate rationale just to say I'm doing something because I've had these views for 30 years. I actually asked Trump about this in the interviews I did with him, and he just dug in. These are my views. This is the way it is going to be. In thinking about the presidency and literature, one of my favorite books is All the King's Men by Robert Penn Warren, won the Pulitzer Prize in 1947. And this, Carl Bernstein and I, when we were first doing our Watergate reporting, we thought, gee, what should we call our book? And because it seemed not right, we didn't call it All the King's Men and steal completely from Robert Penn Warren. So we made it All the President's Men. It's been suggested to me because of what's going on with Trump now, we should go back to calling our book All the King's Men. But there is a portion, many portions in the book, All the King's Men, that really resonate with description and the power of language. And I want to just read something from that 1947 Pulitzer Prize book, All the King's Men. And it, again, is this illustration of the sweep of politics and human emotion. And Robert Penn Warren writes, at the end of this marvelous, memorable book, we shall come back, no doubt, to walk down the row and watch young people on the tennis courts by the clump of mimosas and walk down the beach by the bay where the diving floats lift gently in the sun, and on out to the pine grove where the needles thick on the ground will deaden the footfall so that we shall move among the trees as soundlessly as smoke. But that will be a long time from now, and soon now we shall go out of the house and go into the convulsion of the world and out of history into history and the awful responsibility of time. Thank you.
What a beautiful way to start things off, and it shows sort of your remarkable ability to weave history and character study into the work that you do.
Oh no, Robert Penn Warren did that.
Yes, but you're able to contextualize. You contextualize that and bring it to the present day. So, War is a masterclass in diplomacy, and in it, you really focus on a lot of the characters. You had unprecedented, well, you had not unprecedented, you had extraordinary access to Trump during his first, Trump won during his first tenure as president. And
in 2020,
in 2020,
the last year of his first presidency. I mean, what an extraordinary time. This was the year of COVID. And Trump, I had done the first book, Fear, without his cooperation, and the book came out and he denounced it, said it's totally untrue, it's bullshit, and all made up. And then he had advisors who said to him, actually, it's all true. And that surprised Trump. And Trump
did he read it?
Then for this, the second book, Rage, invited me to the Oval Office to sit across from him at the Resolute desk, and he said, I will give you anything you want, and I will answer all your calls. So he would call at random. My wife, Elsa, who's here. Where are you, Elsa? Did they give you a seat?
She's right in the front.
Right here. Thank you. Trump would call, and he would say, and Elsa would pick up the phone, is Bob there? And Elsa said, may I ask who is calling? And he said, Donald Trump. You know, no secretaries, no handlers. And she caught the idea and the voice, and she said, oh, Mr. President. And it was a time when COVID was ravaging the country. It turns out from the interviews I was able to do with Trump's National Security Advisor, Robert O'Brien, and Matt Pottinger, the Deputy National Security Advisor, stunning information they provided me about how they warned Trump in January of 20 that COVID was coming, that it was going to kill 650,000 people. And if you listen to the tapes, all of the tapes are recorded with Trump's permission or of other parties. You see that I call it a moral felony that Trump knew, had expert warning, and just kissed it off and kept saying publicly, oh, it's going to go away, telling me, oh, don't worry, it's going to go away. And if you chart all of that out, it's not only a moral felony, it's a catastrophe of major proportions.
There was an interesting side story related to COVID on about how Trump sent a number of COVID machine tests to Putin, which Trump denied and the Kremlin confirmed.
Yeah, well, I had it in my book that these very expensive machines to test for COVID, that Trump had acquired some of them and sent them to Putin. And, of course, Americans needed these very expensive machines. And so Putin, I have a transcript of the conversation between Trump and Putin. It's one of those microphones that's inserted in the desk. And it's quite remarkable because Trump says, well, I've given you these machines, and Putin says, well, I know Americans need them, and Trump says, oh, don't tell anybody that. And it was, again, a case of Trump kneeling before the needs of Putin rather than the American people.
I want to stay on Trump and Putin for a little bit more and talk about Ukraine. So while one of the things that sort of, and the whole book is extraordinary, but one of the chapters that really sort of stopped me was the 2022 and how close we were to nuclear war over there. And what you really were able to share is the incredible amount of diplomacy that went into dealing with that, in addition to the extraordinary intelligence we had about what was going on in the Kremlin, what the Biden administration was doing in coordination with other leaders to stop it.
Yes, I mean, in Russia, Russians and Putin have a doctrine that if they are facing catastrophic battlefield loss, in other words, in a war or what was going on in Ukraine, they can use tactical nuclear weapons. And the United States learned this through intelligence, and it was one of the hairiest moments I think I've ever reported on, because Putin was going to do it. And he was talked out of it. Biden responded very aggressively, actually got the Chinese president Xi to talk to Putin and say, don't do it. And in all of this book is kind of the silent shadow of nuclear war, that it's quite possible, and how close we came, and how it was avoided. And you think about it as I think we kind of have to, There are 9 countries that have nuclear weapons. It is that silent shadow that overhangs so much of the diplomacy, the discussions in this book. And again, it's part of that really intolerable risk that our leaders have put our country in.
What was so striking about it was that the way that it sort of won the incredible information that we had that Putin was going to start the war, sort of what the stories that he was starting to tell, the myth, and all the while he was saying, no, we're not starting a war, we're just building up forces there.
In other words, an invasion of Ukraine, yes.
And how accurate our intelligence was. And again, the diplomacy that you presented in terms of how the American intelligence and American secretaries of state and everyone were going to other countries to get them prepared, to get them to understand that this was actually going to happen. And then the diplomacy that it took to, when Putin, people started to insinuate that Ukraine was going to use a dirty bomb, therefore sort of setting up the stage for them going forward, and sort of Putin's pattern of sort of setting up a reason for aggression.
Yes, and what it shows, I mean, former President Biden gets very little credit, but the things he did diplomatically and behind the scenes were critical to avoiding some sort of nuclear war, nuclear use by Putin. And what is so interesting is that Biden, who was, I happen to be his age, 175, no, just 82. I think he's a little older, but he experienced Vietnam as a senator, and he realized that the Vietnam War, the big giant mistake was sending U.S. troops. We eventually had, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, 500,000 American troops involved in the Vietnam War. And Biden, as president now, was determined in the Ukraine war to not send American troops. A very important, turns out to be a very wise decision, because now if we had American troops fighting in the Ukraine war, the commander-in-chief, Donald Trump, who knows, which of course is always the question with Trump, what he would do.
Speaking of nuclear war,
Speaking of nuclear war.
The news this past week in terms of what the strikes from Israel and Iran, you have a lot of context, and you sort of talk about in your book about what's going on with during the Biden administration, what was going on with Israel. Can you talk a little bit about can you contextualize the recent news for us?
What's going on now? I mean, it's a nightmare. Any exchange of between Israel and Iran, which is now going on, is a horror show for everyone. And whether the calmer, reasonable voices will prevail on this, let's hope so.
So for the diplomacy part, which is, I think, some of the really compelling work that you did, in this case, diplomacy was being tried with Iran, right? With Witkoff going over and trying to come up with a deal with Iran. And then do you have any sort of insight in terms of the diplomacy in this situation?
Yeah, well, it was hard, and it was never achieved, and you never know what Iran is up to. I mean, now, look at what's going on now. I mean, actual fighting between Israel and Iran on a scale that hopefully does not increase, but it's a tinderbox, and it's the Middle East.
So if I can just pull one more string on the diplomacy, because I think that the insight that you provided there was a lot of diplomacy going on within the Biden administration in terms of attempts to de-escalate, to work things through with Israel, with Hamas, with Palestine, and with Iran, sort of these different situations. Is there anything that you understand is happening, or you see is happening, or you hope is happening on the diplomatic side to de-escalate this?
Right now, no, I have not done new reporting on that, but I mean, it is a scramble. And as I say, what's the idea of a military exchange between Israel and Iran that is going on now apparently at a limited level is still a nightmare. And, whether, I mean, again, we have to look at Trump, whether he is kind of inclined or capable of conducting the necessary diplomacy to prevent this from, he's not, when I say he really keeps telling people, including me, well, I've had those views for 30 years. I don't know anyone in my personal or professional life who will argue, well, I've had those views for 30 years, so that's a rationale for what I'm doing now. Very dangerous time.
So you open your book with this really sort of interesting, unearthed interview from your archives, from a 1989 interview that you had with Trump, where he indicates this improvisational nature, which is in contrast to that view for 30 years. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes. I mean, this is Carl Bernstein, my former Watergate partner, said in 1989, so this is 36 years ago, Trump is a real estate king in New York, no idea of entering politics. And Carl says, let's interview Trump. We're in a church, so I can't tell him what I said. But I said, why do we want to talk to Trump? He has nothing to do with politics. And Carl, truly having one of the best sniffers in journalism, said, no, let's talk to Trump and let's see what he's up to. And so we did this. And let me get some of the notes of it, because I mean, it's a fabulous interview, because Trump just openly says, now, this is all New York, and we're asking, what's the future? And he said, quite frankly, I don't know where I'm going. Well, fast forward to this is in a way his motto. I don't know where I'm going. And so you get this glimpse of Trump 36 years ago, acknowledging that, that's okay. He doesn't have to, but we see that in his daily performance as president. Why am I doing this? How does it connect here? Again, what is the theory? And the theory is, I've had these views for 30 years, so I'm going to stick with them.
So one of the themes that I found in your most recent book was the importance of a strong cabinet. You sort of you give some credit to Biden in some cases and some faults to Biden, but you'll also sort of point out the strength of his cabinet. As I've heard you make comments on some of the current cabinet. What are some of your concerns that you have?
It's stunning. Now, in my view, and this goes back to my time in the Navy 50 years ago and working in the Pentagon and covering secretary, in the course of the work I've done at the Washington Post and for books, I got to know 16 secretaries of defense, and it is the most important cabinet post. It really is the deputy president for war, and the current secretary of defense. I see some people are smiling. Hegseth is a unusual pick, and he is a model of unseriousness, and you want in that position somebody to be all seriousness, because it's such an important job, and so, you know, that's what we have, and that's, it's shocking.
We're going to open it up to questions from the audience in a minute, but I want to talk about journalism for a few minutes. So your career has been built on holding power to account and looking at truth and power in presidential situations. What is your view on the role of journalism now?
You know, like always, there's so much more work to do, and the method needs to be a method of patience, of talking to people, getting documents, getting notes, and trying to present what is discovered as fairly and as accurately as possible. And it's hard work. It's difficult work.
And I think right now, in wherever you live, if you live on Nantucket, if you live in New York, if you live in Boston or DC, I think one of the most important things you can do to support democracy is to subscribe to your local newspaper. And thank you.
And would you say that again, please?
And one of the things.
No, I mean,
yeah.
look, the newspaper I've worked for 52 years. It has its up and downs, like all institutions, but in the end, it's going to be strong.
And we need it to be strong. We need all of these news institutions to be strong. And one of the things I'm hearing in the newsrooms that I work with and in other newsrooms is this sense of a bit of exhaustion right now. I mean, it's really, really hard right now for journalists that are covering all of this. Can you provide any sort of advice or perspective for these newsrooms?
Well, I have some thoughts about this. One, when after failing a tryout at the Washington Post and then working for a weekly paper outside of Washington for a year, I went back to work at the Post and was hired and started in September 1971. That's a long time ago. And it was a place where you could find out what was going on. But you quickly learned as a reporter, and I think this applies to lots of professions, that you can do a good, serviceable story by talking to 2 or 3 people. You can also do a serviceable, adequate, and even better story if you talk to 16 people. Now, talking to 16 people in a day is a chore. And you will find that you are calling people, and then they're calling you at home at 11 o'clock, and you need to be totally immersed in the situation you're reporting on. But if you talk to 16 people, you're going to see more potential, more consequence, more paths to discover what is going on, whatever the story is. And we learn, of course, in journalism that the first look at the story is never enough. And so if you get in the habit of trying to talk to 16 people, and it's possible, you're going to do a much better job. And it's the level of effort that matters. I mean, in any profession, this is the case.
Great, good perspective. So we have a question over here with that, over here, sorry.
You don't have to put your hat on.
Hi. We are running microphones for the questions, so please wait for a microphone to arrive,
Okay.
and then we'll go with those questions. Thank you.
First, I just want to say, Mr. Woodward, you're a national treasure, and you make me. You make me wish there were knighthood in this country. I wanted to ask you, you've covered, by my count, 11 administrations, if you double the 2 Trump administrations, and I'm wondering which administration you covered in your time as a reporter most clearly lays the groundwork for the current moment. In other words, what administration kind of augurs our current moment, or through which administration do we flow toward this phantasmagoric moment?
Yeah, it's a great and important question. What you do when you are administrations or presidents, to a certain extent, are like children, your children as a reporter. And you know their flaws, and you try to deal with them responsibly. I think there's much more work to be done, particularly along the lines of covering Trump. It is a chore. I mean, if you look what goes on now, Trump will hold a press conference for an hour, and then their cable news and everyone will then have an hour or 10 hours of discussion. What did he really mean? What did he say? What is he going to do? And there is so much uncertainty. And I think part of the job of being president, because it's so monumental, it's such a concentration of power, is bringing some sort of certainty and coherence. And we just do not see it enough with Trump. And it is at our peril.
There's a great quote in his book, which I think sort of encapsulates your approach to covering these administrations. You say, secrets always exist, and often the secrets have immense weight, especially in human relations. What do the main characters really think of each other? What's going on behind the scenes that others might not notice nor imagine? What might be the driving forces that are not articulated or visible? And I feel like that's sort of your approach to.
Well, you want to find out. I mean, one of the things I have in the book, you see that when Biden is president, his view of Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu, is, again, I'm in a church, so I won't quote it, but he's a effing liar. And so there is a lot of hostility at the upper levels of not just our government, but other governments, and a lot of distrust. And solving these very large problems requires trust.
Thank you very much for being here with us. I think a lot of citizens are wondering, what can we do to resist the slide to authoritarianism?
No problem. Vote, be involved, listen, don't paper over the complexity of what is going on. And, you know, the slide to authoritarianism, to a certain extent, we may already be there. As I say, this concentration of power in the presidency is remarkable, and presidents can do all kinds of things and have capacities, and the question needs to be, where do the restraints come from? And they need to come internally, and they need to come from the other political party. And we do have another political party, and yes, the Democrats, it's a hard job.
Thank you. I'd be interested in your thoughts on Congress. I look at Congress as, I look at the polls about Trump and some of the policies he's put in place, and many of them are not popular even amongst Republicans. When does Congress step up and you know, I hate to say get a backbone, but do something?
I wish I knew. You know, this is a real difficult problem. Trump controls the Republican Party and controls the Republican Party in Congress. And so we're going to stumble on. At the same time, I just think that we've got, you know, that Trump is a figure of uncertainty, and he does not plan. He just does not plan. I learned this when I spent that year interviewing him in 2020. He acknowledges that he does not plan. And presidents need to plan for good times and bad times.
Where are the microphones?
Excuse me. One more. Okay, we have time for one final very quick question. Linda, you found, okay? Thank you. Perfect.
Hi, thanks again for coming. This was a great interview. Mr. Woodward, I had a question, which was, I know that for so many of us, reading the news is hard. You just get inundated by things, and I think people's attention spans are shorter, as was touched on last night. I'd like to know if you could share what news outlets, like what are your, when you wake up and you look at the, you know, what's your feed look like? What are the reporters that you're reading, and who would you suggest that we follow?
Oh boy, I mean, easier to answer the question about the creation of the universe. You know, it's a very complicated difficult time, but I wanted to go back to this time that Carl Bernstein and I had with Trump in New York City 36 years ago. And now again, no politics. He's not in politics at this point. He's the real estate baron in New York. And we did, of course, ask him, you know, what's your plan? Where are you going? What do you think you're going to do? And he said at that time, you ask me where I'm going, and I don't think I could tell you at all. In other words, he does not have a plan. He's the great improviser. We see that in his personal life, his political life. He's the great improviser. And I think these are accurate accounts, Trump has made a lot of money, and he's not disappointed. He's positioned himself to make that money, but
I think I can answer that question. I can help with that a little bit. I think that really the greatest, there are all these studies about trust in media and where people do. People have trust, a tremendous amount of trust in their local media. There's a real connection there. And so in terms of input, I think staying really connected to your local community, however local that is really, really important. And so much of what happens to you directly happens at the local level. So staying engaged and informed on your local community, I think, is a really great place to start. And then going where there are real newsrooms behind it. I think one of the things, as an outsider coming into the news industry, it's amazing the standards that traditional legacy media hold themselves to. It is a self-governing thing where if somebody does something that's outside the rules of journalism, the whole sort of, all of journalists sort of really stand up against it. There really are specific standards that legacy media hold themselves to that matter. And so I have a tremendous amount of trust in those. And I think it's also—
But the public doesn't.
But that's our job, is to help inform them about the qualities of and what those standards are and why there should be trust in particularly institutions. And I think it's also really important to find to read views from the other side, from whatever your side is, to make sure you understand the counter arguments to subscribing to that. So thank you. I think that's a really important question. And we're going to close, because I'm getting dirty looks over there, by saying, you know, you've covered all of these presidents since Nixon. We've talked about sort of a lot of stressful things. This is called war. What gives you hope right now?
Oh, wow. That there is a lot of goodwill, and in both political parties, not enough of it, quite frankly. And I think it's necessary to build on that goodwill. But I also think that it's a moment of self-reflection for journalists, for politicians, and I want to tell an old story that has stuck with me. After Nixon resigned in 1974, Katharine Graham, who was the owner, publisher of the Washington Post, one of the great journalists of all time. There's a documentary that they've done, or she wrote her memoir and won the Pulitzer Prize. And Katharine Graham was a rock for Carl and myself. And so after Nixon resigned, she, in her own handwriting, wrote Carl and myself a letter. Dear Carl and Bob, and it was not on any of the stationery she had, but just a yellow legal tablet. And it said, now that Nixon has resigned, I want to give you some thoughts and ideas. And she said, so Nixon's resigned. Now, this is in her own handwriting. You did some of the stories. Quote, now don't start thinking too highly of yourselves. You don't get a letter like that from the boss that often. But it was sobering, and it's true. And she said, she went on, she said, let me give you some advice. And the advice is beware the demon pomposity. A lot of heads, beware the demon pomposity. Good advice 50 years ago, good advice today in 2025.